Hi, I'm Maril McDonald. 27 years ago, I founded my firm, Gagan MacDonald, on the premise that organizations don't transform, people do. Since then, as we've worked with many of the world's most admired global companies to navigate the human struggle of change, one thing has remained true. Leadership matters a lot. Let Go and Lead is a podcast about what it takes to be a leader and how great ones balance the head and heart to transform the companies that transform the world. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Jody Ono, a leadership development expert and professor at Hitotsubashi University Business School in Tokyo, Japan. Jody and I discuss what she figured out about leadership development by teaching the topic in different countries, as well as the limits of authentic leadership for global audiences. We also discuss why great leaders tune their antennas to the frequencies of others, finding different ways to meet them where they are. Whether you're leading a team, a company, or just beginning to step into your own leadership identity, there's something here for you. So get comfortable and get ready to let go and lead. Hi, Jody. Welcome to Let Go and Lead. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us.
Thank you so much, Maril. It's an honor to be here with you in this great podcast.
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
So do I.
You know, I found it so interesting when we talked a while back to realize that you've actually worked in the U.S., Sweden, and Japan, which are, three totally different cultures.
Yes.
I think that's fascinating.
They are maybe not as on the surface as different as, three we may put together, but they certainly are different when you live in all three of them. Yes.
What have you found as the biggest differences?
Most for me, given my focus on leadership development, it really is how leadership is understood and practiced in the different contexts. Because as we know, leadership is always in context, right? So these very different cultural settings have different pros and cons when it comes to personal agency and personal sense of access to leadership.
And I know we're going to get into a lot of that, and that's something you've studied quite thoroughly. But let me just ask a question. It was pointed out to me that you worked in each of these countries as a local employee versus an expat. What is the distinction? I realized I don't even know.
Oh, that's a great question, and I wish it were one that was asked more frequently. So, when you come to a country, when you are sent there by your organization, a lot is resolved for you. So you have your housing situation, your health insurance, your local administrative matters taken care of for you. You usually get a housing allowance.
I see what you do.
And in the organizations, also in the workplace, that is also a certain status, right? So we differentiate between someone who's an expat hire and someone who's a local hire. So if you're being there and working at you're living the life of a local person rather than someone who is kind of an emissary from an organization. And that opens up a whole new realm of interactions in the course of your workday and your life.
Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it. Yeah. So what you mentioned the difference in leadership in the different countries, and what do you really see as are there certain things that you'd say are like dramatic distinctions, or are they more nuances?
The simplest way to explain it is to think about the role of the individual in society in each of these three places. So, we're familiar with different scales of, high context, low context, or individuality versus group mindedness. So in that way of thinking, in those dimensions, these three countries, US, Sweden, Japan, are really different. So the US, of course, is a highly individualistic society. So we know that. But also something that has struck me about the US is that there's very little fear of making decisions. And so the willingness to go ahead and make a call or make a judgment is pretty high. And that might be because of the cultural strengthening of the individual as a decision maker. And even though the decision may turn out to be wrong, people seem to have confidence that they can fix it, right? So, even if they make a misstep, making the decision and making a choice and moving forward is more important than waiting until you have a situation where everyone agrees. So even if the situation turns out to be wrong, it's reparable. That's what has kind of struck me about the U.S. For Sweden, I think the most salient issue for me there was very, very deep respect for personal and individual aspirations. So it's not so much about individual decision making, it's more about individual choices for oneself. And so if a certain person views their future in a certain way, that is quite highly admired and respected, and people will allow you those sets of aspirations and support you generally. While at the same time, the society itself is highly collective minded. So you have this kind of coexistence of individual aspiration and collective consciousness, which is very, very interesting to me. Then in Japan, you have a different variation where collective consciousness, group mindedness, thinking always about the group's welfare is so, so strong. And that has its beauties, but it also has its drawbacks for individuals, because what happens is that individual decision making is less prioritized, I would say. I wouldn't say it's not appreciated, but it's not prioritized. We hear about consensus decision making in Japan. So I think this is kind of where this comes from. This is like, oh, but is this okay with everybody? Is a very, very strong current in Japan. And there's, unlike the US, there's not a lot of comfort with the fact that a decision may be incorrect. So the confidence in going back and fixing that mistake is lower. So these are my 3 observations about these 3 contexts.
It's interesting because some people use the word choice and decisions interchangeably, and yet you were really using them in a different way to make a distinction. What do you see as the difference there?
Well, for me, a decision, especially in the workplace, is going to affect lots of people. It may be changing people's roles. It may be allocating decisions differently. It may be restructuring reporting lines, for example.
Yeah.
When I talk about choices, of course, I think about leadership, offering leadership as a personal choice. So when I think about leadership, and that's a decision I make for myself. I guess that's just kind of how I was talking about it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah. What would you say if you looked at those 3 contexts of those countries and the cultures you just described? Could you actually point to a specific leadership quality you admire in each of them?
I guess in the US context, I'd have to say individual agency. I have to say that really, really is not a stretch. Culturally, people tend to have it. They don't hesitate to use it. And I think this is rooted way, way back in our education system, which may now be a little bit uncertain in its future. But I think in past generations, our education system has really done well in shoring up individual agency. It's a very positively oriented, positive psychology kind of approach all the way back into elementary school. For Sweden, I think it would have to be the right of every individual to make their own personal choices. I think that's really, really strong in Sweden. And again, along with this idea of we are a collective society and we all have to contribute to it. And then in Japan, I think the kind of the leadership quality would be tremendous caring for the welfare, not only of the team we work with, but for the organization we work with.
Yeah. It's just really interesting to think about what your journey must have been like moving from one culture to the next.
Yes.
Just as you learn what works in one place, you probably showed up somewhere else.
Yes, that did happen to me.
How did you How did you make those transitions? Like, as you first started as the new kid on the block, and you grew up, I believe, in the U.S., right?
Yep, I'm
So
from the
then, and
US.
then went to Sweden. It, am I
Oh,
correct, or was it
yeah, I
Japan?
was just back and forth. No, I didn't get to Japan until quite late in life. So,
Oh, okay.
I grew up in the US, and but when I was a teenager, I had my first trip to Europe and fell in love with it, and decided I wanted to spend my life in Europe. So, right, it was sort of before, during, and after college, I went to Europe whenever I could. And then for about 20 years, I was in Europe, and those were sort of the most formative years of my career. Although I did start my career in Washington, D.C., I shortly thereafter went to France and then Sweden and was there for these 20 years. And that was, it's during that time, I think, in your like mid 20s to up to maybe age 40, that your professional values and your professional affinities maybe are kind of forged. You sort of you start learning what kinds of people you like to work with, what energizes you professionally. And so that was where I was at that time. And I think that was probably, looking back, good, because I already had quite a bit of professional experience under my belt before working first with undergrads. And then we moved to Japan in 2014. And like you just said, I changed context dramatically. I'm not a Japanese speaker. I teach only in English, and I teach students from um, more than 20 countries in MBA program. But I will say very openly, and I want to say this for anyone who's listening who's ever experienced something like this, it takes a while to get your head around how to teach leadership development in different contexts. And you need to have patience with yourself to figure out the keys and figure out what resonates with your audience. It's a true meet them where they are endeavor, and which is an old educator's saying, I guess, or I'm not sure, but that's how I apply
Yeah.
it. Uh,
Should be a leader's saying too.
I hope it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What?
So then
Okay.
when,
So you
yeah,
so you were trained in the U.S. and trained in a military context, then ended up teaching in Japan and at Hitotsubashi University.
yes.
What? How did that translate for you?
Well, so yes, I was teaching undergrads and in Texas, and I was very fortunate to be mentored in what I would say rigorous and mindful approaches to teaching leadership development there by the wonderful staff of the Center for Leadership Excellence there at Texas A&M. When I got to Japan, I taught, yes, at Hitotsubashi University Business School, which is the leading business school in Japan and global MBA program. These students have work experience and they are coming to Japan. Many of them would like to stay and have their careers in Japan. Many of them will go back to their home countries. They're from all over the world, literally. And what I had to do was make the shift from teaching an undergraduate, highly homogenous population in Texas. At that time, in Texas, my population of students was like 90% male, and they were all in uniform. And they were undergrads from many, many different majors. So I had aerospace engineers, I had sociologists, I had people coming from business students, all kinds. Then when I was teaching MBAs, of course, that's very, that's a general management MBA. They want business skills. And so I started teaching out a small elective course just as a part-time instructor. Well, I had to figure out how to convey something like authenticity to that group. Now, the students are from all over the world, but most of them are from Asia. So many, many different Asian countries. And having that discussion around authentic leadership was a tremendous intellectual challenge for me, because authenticity and authentic leadership, although it does draw on global wisdom, I would say, going way back for millennia, it really has been packaged and tied up with a bow in the U.S., in the military academies, and then in the early years of this millennium, around the year 2003, started to be taught in earnest, of course, by Bill George at Harvard Business School. I believe
Right.
he offered the first course in authentic leadership development there,
When he
and
retired from Medtronic. Yeah,
correct,
right. Right.
correct,
Yeah.
and really did, I think, the business world a tremendous service in kind of codifying authentic leadership and identifying what is that quality of authenticity that helps us resonate as leaders. But I can tell you that authenticity is not the same level of accessibility in many Asian cultures, because many Asian cultures, not just Japanese, um, and the individual's role in society is so very important, and we look to society for cues as to how to behave. Of course, that's true anywhere, but to a much greater extent, I would argue, and this is what when we talk about high context cultures, I think this is one of the features of that, oh, I'm a school teacher, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a mother, I'm a husband, and society tells me what that entails, and in some ways even gives me a script as to how I should interact with other people based on that role I have. And of course, as individuals, we have many, many roles, and so you're always in the situation of shifting gears among these different roles in the course of your day. So to bring authenticity to that, maybe you can start to see why a student might say to me, "Oh, but Jody Sensei, I can't be authentic at work. I'm at work." And when students said that to me, it just, of course, maybe I'm perhaps slow on the uptake that I didn't expect it. But for me, it was tremendously kind of worldview opening to get the sense of, oh, okay, what I'm saying is not what these students are hearing. And which, of course, is the critical moment for any teacher, leader, or anybody talking to a group, right? So I had to really go back and say, okay, what are the keys to help my students, my MBA students from all these Asian countries, and also from Europe and the US, come together around the idea of authenticity.
And so, I mean, it's interesting because it sounds like in order really to help them make the shift, you had to change yourself.
Yes. And it's the kind of thing, Maril, this is what we always teach, this is what we talk to when we're doing CEO coaching, this is one of the maxims, right? But I'm so grateful because I have the opportunity to experience that. Before, I did too much damage teaching leadership without having a clue about the kinds of what people really needed from me. Okay, so that's why we need to kind of focus so much on our relatedness, because that's how we know what is needed of us as leaders. So that was what I went through when I got to Japan 11 years ago. And since then, I've been able to build on that. And now my course is required for all our MBA students. Once I kind of got there and I found a point of resonance around authenticity, I started building.
I'm listening to you. I'm thinking about the fact that there are still, you mentioned that people in the US are much more comfortable with the concept, but there are a lot of people that I think would still say, I can't be authentic at work in the US. And is there anything you've learned by having gone through this journey in Japan that you might share with those of us who are US based in terms of what we might continue to bring to that conversation? I mean, I'm sure you've been following everything that's going on now with DE&I and don't,
Yes.
bring yourself to work, don't bring yourself to work. What do you make of all that?
Oh, I mean, there's so much we can say there. So I can just give some clues from how I processed it here. So I had to figure out where is the disconnect happening in terms of our interpretation of authenticity? Because I think when people hear authenticity, they hear different things. For example, the work of Herminia Ibarra at Harvard Business School helped. She has some writing on this that really helped me and helped my students. And it was really around kind of understanding what authenticity is. It doesn't mean just go in there and be yourself. And this is kind of, in my view, irresponsible advice. Because when we are just going in there and being ourselves, we may be weakening our capacity to sense what other people are experiencing of us. And so what I found was I couldn't really talk to my students about just being themselves. What I had to talk to them about was figuring out why you're doing what you're doing just for yourself. You don't have to go around and scream it from the mountaintops. But what I want you to do is be substantive in yourself and to know, why are you in this organization? Why are you personally committing to this organization? What is it that drives you? A big factor in my teaching is worldview. I use it as a foundational concept for leadership development. So very briefly, what do you see around you and how do you feel about it? And that is, to me, the seminal knowledge that leads us to an idea of why we might want to offer leadership. So leadership purpose. Okay. And having that discussion with my students opened up their idea of authenticity that wasn't just go in there and, hey, this is who I am. And if you don't like it, too bad. That really did not appeal, okay, in this culture where I am. And to be honest, it may have appealed to me at one time in my life, but it doesn't appeal to me anymore because it's not collaborative. And in some way, it's also not inclusive. So that kind of brings in the whole DEI, conundrum that I think we're struggling with, is that what does it mean to be inclusive? Does it mean I'm going to throw my full self at you and you're just going to have to deal with it? Or does it mean this is who I am? I'm strong in who I am and I want to know who you are too. And let's see what we can do together. Like, to me, that's and I make it sound simple, and I know it's not simple, believe me, or we would have figured it out already, but that's the orientation I try to impart.
Well, I think, I love that. And a lot of what you're really talking about is doing the work on yourself first, right? And really getting clear and deep. And as we know, a lot of leaders struggle with that. I know you've talked about some core leadership principles, and authenticity, of course, is one of them. What are some of your others?
Thank you. So yes, I do. So when I talk about authentic leadership development, that is the kind of starting model that I use. So it might be helpful for some people. Like, I have 3 essentials that I developed, with which I begin my course to get everybody on the same page around, okay, what are we doing here? And what are our kind of guidelines? What are our guiding principles? So the first one is my definition. How do I define leadership anyway? Which I think anybody who's having a course on leadership really needs to get everybody together around that before they can move forward. So the definition that I developed was, leadership is an invitation to engage in change. I developed that out of these 3 core concepts. So the first one is invitation, meaning that you will never force anyone to follow you. And what I say to my students is, as a manager, you can kind of punish people for not doing their work properly, or you can issue sanctions, right? But that's not the same thing as getting them to think of you as their leader. They'll think about you as their boss or their manager, but I'm pretty sure it's not a leader-follower relationship. Okay.
Hmm.
Second of all, engage and change. So change is something we have to do together, right? We need a response from everybody for leadership to be happening. And then finally, change is a big one because it's about the status quo isn't something we lead. We maintain the status quo. We preserve. We maybe even care for, of course, the status quo. But I don't associate leadership with staying in the same place. I think if you're going to move forward, that's the realm of leadership. So invitation to engage in change, and the change part brings us into a very interesting discussion around the distinction between leadership and management, which is also a foundational discussion in my class, especially in Asian contexts and organizations, like Japanese companies, for example. Leadership and management are commingled constantly. There's not this distinction. And I'm not making this up. I mean, Japanese executives have told me, Jody Sensei, I've never heard anyone make that distinction before. And it opens them up to, okay, there's a whole other skill set out there that I haven't been cultivating in myself, even though I really think I'm a good manager. But yeah, maybe I haven't really been developing my leadership skills when it comes to motivating and inspiring and aligning and getting people excited about what they're doing.
I think there's a big difference between change management and change leadership also.
Yes.
I always think of change leadership as very different than change management, because change management is often like putting in the policies and the processes and the
Yep.
systems, and it's like running the cattle through the chute, right?
I mean,
Where change leadership is way more what you're describing.
well, the way that I take great pains to help anyone I'm talking to understand that for me, there's no hierarchy between management and leadership. They're just different. They're different activities that require different skill sets. And really, every organization needs high quality both. You can't run an organization without good management. So I would never be in a position of saying, oh, that's not a leader, it's just a manager. I would never say something like that because good management is precious.
In addition to talking about the whole concept of an invitation to engage in change, I know you also talk a lot about leaving a space for not knowing. Let's
Right.
talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So the I mentioned the first essential. I said there were three. So actually this is the second one. So the second essential that I talk about is leadership is a relationship that we develop with others. Okay. So um this is was also new in my context. It's like, oh, leadership isn't something that we do to other people. It's something we do with people, right? So for example, if you think about it, of course there's a thing called self-leadership, which is really important. But in an organizational setting, everybody has to participate in the leadership. And so that presupposes this idea that in that relationship, information and context and all kinds of wisdom and expertise is going to be shared, right? And if you can view leadership as a relationship, it relieves you of the maybe self-constructed view that you need to be providing all the answers, all the frameworks. You become suddenly much more collaborative, and through that collaboration, through that space for not knowing, you invite others to develop themselves. And that is, of course, since the work on transformational leadership, that we assess leaders by their ability to develop other leaders, to create more leaders. And so that's the space for not knowing. To me, that's the same thing. Because when there's a vacuum in the knowledge, or when people are sitting around a table and they don't know what to do, and the leader says, I'm not sure, what are your ideas? There is your leadership space for anybody who wants to join it. There's so many expectations on leaders that I think we didn't have 30 or 40 years ago. So I usually show my students or my corporate participants a big long list. And on the list are sustainability, diversity, inclusiveness, climate justice, social contribution, politics and geopolitics, emergency preparedness, responsible supply chain, purpose, meaning, and impact, not to mention generational factors. We have boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. And the Gen Alpha is just soon to come in the lead. So I don't think this was so much, all these things were on the radar or the worldview of the typical business leader 30 years ago. So it's complex now. The complexity is real, right? We've gone from VUCA to Bani, right? And so now we need each other more than ever. We need each other's expertise. We need each other's commitment. We need each other's energies.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Well, let's back up too, just for people who might not be familiar with the acronyms. So VUCA,
Sure.
right? Volatile,
uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Right.
And that's actually quite old. I mean, people are
right. Military.
Yeah, it goes way back. But Bonnie is brittle, ambiguous, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. And that is coming now. And I find it helpful in the past 3, 4, 5 years, because I think the brittle to me is especially interesting, because it's about that systems are more fragile than we thought.
Yeah.
Institutions are more fragile than we thought.
And we're really seeing it with how fast they're coming and going.
Yep. It's a lot easier to weaken these wonderful institutions, which we should be proud of and which has taken us a long time to build. But that doesn't mean they are completely robust, and they people cannot find workarounds.
Yeah. Well, how do you think that leadership's evolving now with all these changing global expectations and issues and complexities?
Well, so I think leadership is evolving into, as I've mentioned this a couple of times, a much more collaborative endeavor. Okay, it's distributed, it's shared. One of my students just a couple of weeks ago said something I thought was beautiful, which was, leadership now is not power over people, it's power with people.
Power with. We just did a whole program on that. That's so funny.
Well, maybe they saw that program. It all comes full circle. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
And so, so good on you. And good on them, right? For picking up on that.
Well, it wasn't me. It was other members of the team. Yeah.
But I
can't claim it,
because I think it really sums it up, because I mean, there's so much I could say about, where leadership is going. We start with authenticity. We don't leave authentic leadership behind. We keep that. It's so good because it encourages us and helps us to work on ourselves. And then we take our authenticity, we own that, and then we go forth into the world and we bring that and we offer that, but we don't force that on others. We say, this is who I am. This is what I've got. This is what I want to do. Do you want to come with me? Do you want to join me? What would you like to do? We're moving into a new realm, which I talked a lot together with a few other people who are interested in this concept of transcendent leadership. So I believe we're evolving from authentic leadership, taking that along with us, moving from there to transcendent leadership, which is about applying one's leading self, I call it the leading self, in all dimensions of life and work. So we're not just a leader at work. We're not just a leader at home. We're not just a leader when we go to the grocery store. We're a leader we are a leader. We don't do leadership. It's not a doing, it's a being. So we are that, and it's a mindset, and it's something. It's like a a warm, nice cloak we have that gives us strength, and we take strength from our leadership. We don't use our strength on other people. We use it for ourselves. And that's what enables us to connect. So the connecting part, the relatedness part, means you've got to be accepting, you've got to be loving, you've got to be knowing of what everyone else is going through. So if you don't mind me adding one thing about transcendence with turning the dial, when we're talking to people and interacting with people, as a leader, we should always be turning that dial, finding that frequency. Okay, what is going to ring true for this person? What is going to make them feel that I'm inviting them to come along with me and that I value what they want to contribute? So this is, I think, where leadership is going. I'm not talking about the super high level, king of the world kind of leadership, because I can't speak to that. What I'm interested in is everyday workplace behaviors that make organizations better. And so that's what I'm talking about. As a human being, you got to decide, what is it you want from your leadership? Do you want power and control, power over and control over, or do you want power with and energy with?
Yeah, we are so vibrating on the same frequency. Oh, I have to tell you, it's interesting. I think we talked a little bit about this when we met, but we do a program working with leaders with horses, because horses are such a mirror of one's energy. And it really helps people understand how to calibrate yourself in a way that you can test and try, because horses also don't hold the last encounter against you. They'll start anew. So we have so much to talk about all of that, because it's just fascinating.
It is. Like, maybe someday we'll be able to capture that tremendous capacity that horses had, that sensory capacity that horses have, and to
Yeah.
get more of it ourselves. Because I think we have it, but I think we forget that we have it, Maril.
And we don't slow down enough, right?
Right.
Because horses, the incredible immense power that a horse has is that a horse is present. And they're always present in the moment. And it's, just something we all as humans have to work on so rigorously. Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned presence, because that is another big dimension, big pillar of transcendent leadership. So if the listeners are interested, please check out Transcendent Leadership. I'm a big fan. There are many people who are really working for trying to be proponents of this model. So check it out.
You wrote a great article on it too. I forget the name of your co-author.
Yes, Greg Stebbins, Dr.
Yeah,
Greg
thank
Stebbins.
you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. He's been really, when I first started reading about transcendent leadership, I went right to him, and he answered me right back, and we've been talking ever since, and he's been a wonderful mentor to me.
Well, the other thing I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about is your whole point of like, you're counseling CEOs in the C-suite. You're working on putting authentic leadership into action. What do you recommend to people in terms of actually not just understanding the concept, but really living into it?
Well, I have to say, Maril, one of the reasons I have individual consultations in all of my programs, it's not really coaching that I do, although a lot of people want to call it coaching, that's fine, but it's really more a conversation around the fact that leadership is an individual practice. It's not a one size fits all, right? We always say that. If we say that, what we have to do is open up for the possibility that humility in one person is going to show up differently in someone else. Authenticity, resonance, all these things, we access them in different ways because we're unique as human beings, and we wired differently. So what I try to do with individuals is this is exact what you're asking me. Okay, how do you practice transcendence in the workplace? How do you practice transcendence? How do you lead? How do you lead with authenticity in the workplace? Oh, uh, I have guidelines, that I was telling you. One is the definition of leadership. One is that you develop leadership with other people. The third one is you create your own leadership. You are the author of it. You decide what is the way that I engage with people that is convincing and genuine and will convey positive energy to them. So it's a bit of a non-answer. I'm sorry for that, but I guess my answer would be do the work. This goes to the whole mindset of self-awareness. We can work on our self-awareness. We don't just have a fixed quantity and that's it. We need to work on that. We need to really understand how people build perceptions of us and what the outcomes of those perceptions are going to be.
Now, this is fascinating too, because I'm thinking about, so when you're in a big room of people, do you feel that if you try to play to everybody, you're at risk of once again becoming inauthentic or watering yourself down to a point of being liked? How do
Uh,
you
I think
coach
that
someone through that?
that's when we really need to stick to what our substance is as a leader, what
Hmm.
our purpose is as a leader. Our purpose as a leader is not to be liked, right? Our purpose as a leader is to achieve something amazing with people. That's how I would think about it. So,
Right.
yes, do we risk becoming diluted? I think it depends on how much you worked on yourself. Because
Hmm.
if you've worked on yourself and you've gotten clear on many of these guiding principles that provide your core of substance, you're less likely to get diluted. And the more likely you are to be able to respond to criticism, for example, with grace, and not to run for the corners at the first sign of I'm losing them, right? There's always
Yep.
a
Yeah.
moment, and there's always a moment in any group where you
Yeah.
feel people are starting to check out. We all know that feeling. You need to learn how to bring that back with
Hmm.
a connective statement, with an acknowledgement of I'm sensing that maybe some of what I said isn't clear. Let me go back and
Yeah.
not change the
And
energy in the
acknowledge
room,
it.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
don't pretend it's not there.
Right.
That's not authentic.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything that, as you think about this, are there ways that you advise leaders in terms of how to really lead at scale?
Look for opportunities to lead where you haven't been leading. In the
Say more
course of
about that.
in the course of our day, we have many opportunities to lead. Now, it may not be lead in the classic sense that everybody thinks about it, but I think that the measure of a truly deeply related person, in other words, a person who's capable of resonant, present leadership, is a person who can have a meaningful exchange of thoughts, a conversation, observations with anybody. It's a person who doesn't need to rely on context or position or socioeconomic status in order to have a high quality connection with another person, anybody at any time during the day. So, for example, if you're a CEO, how many exchanges do you have with people that are unplanned? If you're a mid-level manager, how many times during the day are you taking a stroll and just saying hello to people for no good reason? this is what brings us relatedness. This is how we build our sensory capabilities. And it's rooted in humility, of course. So, for example, we haven't talked about humility, but humility is really what gives us the ability to relate to other people, I believe, because it gives us the knowledge that we may have a lot to give, but so does everybody else. And as a leader, you should be curious about what that is. So for scaling, actually my advice is to do the opposite thing, is to pull back and go back to the micro interactions that you have every day. And that will open up tremendous generosity of spirit in you as a leader.
This is just fantastic. We talked a lot about what we should do as a leader. And of course, this podcast is called Let Go and Lead. What do you think leaders need to let go of, if anything?
Two things. Let go of deriving leadership identity from an organizational identity or brand. And second of all, refresh your mental models around leadership. What is leadership and what does it do for people?
Well, this has really been great. I have one more question for you. What's next for you?
Oh, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to try to keep doing it in more places with more people, and I'm going to try to find more like-minded people like you, Maril, who love this topic as much as I do, and I'm trying to do that in my region. I'm really trying to build constituency around high-quality leadership in Japan and even more widely in Asia. And I want to help work on those points of practice because those are going to be changing a lot.
Well, let's find something to do together.
Let's. Agreed.
Again, thank you so much, Jody. Really appreciate it.
What an honor. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you.
Same here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Let Go and Lead. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you found this episode insightful, please follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and subscribe to us on YouTube. And don't forget to check out past episodes and interviews on GaganMacDonald.com. Thanks for joining and see you on the next episode of Let Go and Lead.